afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all in this panel discussion. I'm Amrita, and it gives me immense pleasure to bring this panel discussion presented by Ace Perkins, dealers of Jaguar Land Rover, Pune. So today we will be sharing how this COVID-19 pandemic has affected the entire real estate sector and what the future holds basically, and how the luxury real estate will look or will have the impact today. So before starting this discussion, I would just take 1 minute to introduce our panel members. We have Siddharth Vasudevan Murthy, MD Vascon Engineering Limited. We have Ms. Gunjan Goyal, Director Goyal Ganga Developers. We have Rishikesh Manjrekar, Executive Director Amar Builders. We have Harish Shroff with us, Director, Sales and Marketing and Business Development, Nyati Group. We have Mayuri Shende Kankariyal, Director, Commercial Leasing and Operations, Abhinav Group. And then we have Ashish Jain, MD, Kundan Spaces. So I welcome you all. I'm sure I can see a lot of Punekars on the screen today, and Punekars are known for their sharp views and clear thoughts. So I'm sure this discussion will be very interesting. Before starting it, I would like to invite our special guest today, and that's Mr. Mahesh Joshi, who is Business Head Jaguar Land Rover Ace Perkins. And he will welcome our panel members and the audience for today's discussion. Mr. Joshi, over to you.
Yeah, hi all. My name is Mahesh, and it's been a privilege to welcome you all for this discussion. I would thank Amrita and the entire team for giving me an opportunity to do so. We are at Ace Perkins. We represent Jaguar and Land Rover in Pune and rest of Maharashtra. As rightly said by Amruta, Punekars are known for their sharp views, and so are our products known for their sharp visibility in the market. We are part of, VCM group, that is Vikram Modi Group, representing Jaguar Land Rover in Pune, Mumbai, Hyundai, Honda in Mumbai as well. And once again, I would like to welcome one and all, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Joshi. Now I think we should start this discussion. We all know that these are difficult times. People have lost their jobs in this crisis. Many people are still not sure whether they'll have their jobs or not. And the spending capacity has gone to its lowest. So today's focus will be on how this pandemic has changed this entire real estate sector and what the future holds for real estate sector. Do you think that things will go back to normal soon, or this will prolong for a longer time? So my first question is to Mr. Rishikesh Manjrekar. So we have seen that from last 5 months, people are spending more time at home because work from home has become a new normal. Many of us are still today also working from home. So do you think that this will change the scenario for real estate sector, and spending more time will lead to, how will it affect the demand of luxury housing sector? Your thoughts on this?
So ironically, I think that's the first question asked, how does work from home affect real estate? I think I go back to 2014, where AI started affecting commercial real estate, and at that time a lot of people would ask, what would the artificial intelligence reduce on the commercial real estate? And over a period of 5 to 6 years, the effect was almost unrecognizable. I mean, it barely made an impact. I think work from home is a catchphrase that we are forced to do today. Personally, I don't think it's something that will last once the pandemic is under control. Okay. And obviously, I think people want to collaborate, want to innovate and be in offices. So I don't think this is the new normal, so to speak. Okay. It can be a thing of convenience that corporates choose to work from home. One dialogue that I keep hearing from most of my tenants is, this will be a part of probably 10 to 15% of what they see in the future of allowing flexibility to work from home. But that doesn't mean offices go out of style. For housing, and which I come back to a basic question, is in fact it's a good thing, because if you're looking from work from home, you actually need more space, and that means how people are looking for bigger homes. People are looking for space. It is not as easy to work from home if you are looking at only from a residential point of view. You then need to have a separate office. Typically, double income household will need more space again to work, two independent units to work from home. So I think it will, either ways, it will only have a positive impact on real estate. I don't see it taking away too much. Now, it only matters on how long this sustains. My view is, I think within a few months, once this is under control, this will sort of become the new norm. That's what I feel.
Okay, that's a very positive thought, obviously. Finding labor for work has become a tough task these days, because people are waiting for their possessions, and somewhere the answer is coming that we don't have labor. That's the reason the entire period is getting stretched. So my question is to you, Mr. Ashish Jain. How are you tackling with this, finding labor and completing the work? How are you tackling with this?
First of all, good afternoon, everyone. So let's understand first how actually COVID affected everyone, and especially real estate. So COVID actually not only affected the health, but also the economic activities and overall construction industry of the country. And as you all know, real estate contributes to almost 7% of country's GDP and 15% of total workforce. So it is a quite a labor intensive industry, and it also affects various allied industries as well. So as soon as the lockdown started, so we all know that all the developers made sure that their laborers didn't go, they get all the essentials they need for those 1.5 months during the lockdown. So they don't struggle for their basic bread and butter. So everyone made sure that all the essentials are provided to their laborers. But by the end of April and start of May, so 1st of May, I guess, the governments allowed in situ laborers or the laborers who are at site to start the work. But unfortunately, the same time Shramik train was started. And that is when the situation started getting worse. So it was like a dominoes effect. So everyone was leaving as their friends and family were also leaving. And Pune was like, I think, Wuhan. So everyone were just saying that you just leave from Pune. So, and you could also see that similar example on the Bandra station, when thousands and thousands of laborers were rushing to go home. So in basically, in Pune, like आपल्याकडे ते सोनू सूद सारखा कोणी नव्हता पुण्यात. So to help the laborers. So like in Bombay, so he made sure that all the laborers reached properly to their villages and everything. So you could also see that example on 8th of May, which was a black day actually for the laborers. So 16 laborers died on the railway track, which was actually a black day for Maharashtra and for the laborers of India. So coming to your question, that how to tackle or how to tackle this situation of these laborers. So this situation will remain like this, I see in future as well. Because now once the laborers have moved out from the city, they know that there are resources or there are options for them in villages as well. So we need to take, we have to look at the solutions at two places. That is, one is skilled group and one is unskilled group. So in skilled group, we need to deploy new materials which reduce the need for skilled laborers. Then we need to embrace technology to optimize construction schedules and increase efficiency. Expand your recruitment drive by tapping your resources, maybe from vendors, from your known people, partners, etc. And within the unskilled laborers, you may have to train and develop the skills of the existing workforce so that they can earn much more than what they earn from their existing skills. Associating with a skills training institute, which can help both the companies and the workforce. So all these things will have to be overall, you might have to implement to tackle this situation. You may also have to emphasize on labor welfare, better wages, improved safety and health measures, better working environment, all these things. So I think all these measures, if taken together, can reduce the problems which we are facing of the laborers. And so we have done a similar thing. So we have made sure that all the laborers which had gone come back. So we have paid for their train tickets, we have paid for their housing, we have given them food to speed up the site track projects basically. So I think that's the only solution. You might have to take care of them and they take care of you. I mean, that's
Exactly.
what I look at it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. That's a very important point you said. So in this entire lockdown and in this pandemic, we have seen that there's a major economic slowdown. People have lost their jobs like anything. In recent data, they said that in India, in last 5 months, from April rather, 2 crore people have lost their jobs. So it shows that how serious it is. So my question now is to Mr. Siddharth Murthy. So I would like to know from you, considering the high cost of luxury homes, do you think that the demand for luxury homes will go down for a longer period? Or contrary, you think that there will be something else? How do you look at it?
I think over this lockdown period, people have really realized the importance of a house. And I think and people who have realized the importance of a house have also realized the importance of having extra space in their house.
Right.
Today, we talk about work from home. There is also school from home. So space has become a very important criteria. And we see many instances where people are, people who have 2 bedrooms are looking for 3 bedrooms. People who are 3 are looking for that additional room. So that need has automatically come about having extra space in your house. We ourselves are seeing increased demand, and we're seeing more inquiry in our luxury projects right now. And luxury projects typically have minimal inventory, and they're in prime locations. So luxury projects are not mass housing, and therefore you don't have 300, 400, 500 units to sell. You are typically like in a range of maybe between 25 and 75 units that you need to sell. So, so luxury housing will, going forward, the demand, I believe, will be strong.
Okay, great. And I would request all of you to, if you want to say anything about a particular topic, you can also get into the discussion and give your views. So I would like to now ask this question to Gunjan. Gunjan, I would like to know from you that what changes have you made in your business, in your way of doing business in this pandemic time, considering the situation?
So before COVID hit us with the lockdown in March, we were actually at a peak with really great sales, almost 100 units sold at our Kharadi project in the month of Feb. So the first month was very difficult for us to adapt because there was a huge turnaround in the market sentiment. Most of the prospect buyers were delaying their decisions, and even the confirmed bookings were going into cancellations.
Right.
So there was a bit of a panic, but we decided to take it hands-on, and we spent all of April kind of conducting Zoom meetings with the various focus groups to assure our buyers that we were accessible at all times, and also it was for us to analyze what to expect moving forward. We soon realized that the COVID impact was going to stay much longer than we had anticipated. And like you mentioned, we could see how it had started to impact the economy, the businesses with deductions in employee salaries, and also a major loss of jobs across sectors. So this kind of created a slowdown for us. But we were determined not to lose our sale momentum. And in the month of May, we came up with a campaign where the prospect buyer could book his home with a very negligible token amount and only confirm his booking post the lockdown. So that kind of gave him that safety net and not to use up his savings and give more confidence in the product. It gave us really good traction, and it kept a steady flow of sales for us across all projects, keeping our sales guys' morals also high. And fortunately, we've been able to retain a sufficient labor force at our sites, so the construction activity for us did not stop. And we maintained all the necessary precautions at site with sanitization booths, toolbox trainings, and strict distancing norms, of course. Once the lockdowns were lifted, we scheduled private meetings with our customers to come and see the site progress, or the hesitant ones, we scheduled live actual site tours to show them that the work was ongoing and investing in us was a safe decision. We also managed to do maximum handovers for one of our Dhanuri project, which earned us tremendous goodwill from the customers. And but yeah, overall, last few months we've heavily relied on virtual tours, small group webinars, one-on-one Zoom meetings, and shifted a lot of the documentation and transaction to online channels. Yeah.
Okay, great. I would also like to know that how your customers are reacting to this, because possession dates तो काफी projects के late हो रहे हैं, तो ऐसे में customers किस तरह से react कर रहे हैं? Are they cooperating, or tackling this issue is also a big task?
No, of course, everyone understands it. It's hit everybody, and human nature is to be a little empathetic. So we are seeing great support from the customers' end as well. And if the possession is delayed, it is obvious that even the payment structure is delayed. So it's a hand-in-hand process. So it's not that we're demanding the money and not giving the possession. So it's all kind of hand in hand. How much the work has happened is the kind of money we're requesting from the customers. So there's no complaint so far. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Harish Shroff, I would like to ask this question to you. Poor demand and weak credit profile have led to major margin squeeze. So how are you dealing with this?
Amruta, first of all, thank you for asking me this question, and a very warm afternoon. Good afternoon to all the panelists. To begin with, actually, I would like to correct you there on the poor demand part. Actually, the demand is segmented across various options. So if you have a sub 50 lakh category, the demand is robust. If you have a category between 50 to 75 lakhs, there have been revisiting on the thoughts, but they are definitely, buyers who are on the edge. They're going to be definitely making the decisions in near times to come. Yes, I do understand that because of the salary cuts, the banks would have relooked into their home loans and relooked into the clientele whose margins would have squeezed. But at the same time, there are two options. One, the banks have also dropped their interest rates. So particularly the capacity to buy more more of a home loan is already there with them. And second, and the most important thing is that, see, when you look at the developer also, I mean, this is a global pandemic, right? This is not just confined to India or to Pune or to anything. It has gone across the world. So the entire world comes together to find a solution. And we are very close to it, I believe. Now, coming back to the banking sector, the developer has to sit with the customer and rearrange his payment schedule so that he can not only confirm that there's a sale going on, but at the same time, if he's booking into an under construction project, we need to relook at the entire 2 years of quarter-on-quarter refinancing so that the banks also find it convenient. There could be options of top-up loans also to be considered post-possession. And at the same time, one can look at the 80-20 scheme as well. I mean, in case if I have to buy out another year of insecure times, I would rather get into the 80-20 scheme, which, kind of insulates me for the next 1 year. Even if, God forbid, one loses a job in the next 1 year, I'm sure he'll find another one. Margin money will be realigned after 1 year. So there is many happening. So I'm sure all my developer friends have introduced that 80-20 scheme as well, and I'm sure the tractions are doing quite well for us. That's
okay. It's so nice to see all of you speaking all the positive things and looking at it with a positive approach. That's what we need currently, because people are all over us so depressed, and this is really nice. So now I feel that in this scenario, government policies, government rules, government decisions, they play important role. So I would like to ask this to Ms. Mayuri Shende. Mayuri, I would like to know it from you that how government was reacting, whether the government reaction or rules or decisions were fast, or did they take a lot of time? What was government's reaction to this?
Government did take certain decisions like extension of RERA timelines. Even moratorium extensions were implemented, which definitely were positive moves for our industry. However, I feel these hasty decisions lacked in-depth analysis. What our industry genuinely requires at the moment is reduction in stamp duty for about 2 to 3%. This would definitely encourage more sales. This has been in the discussion for a long time, but has not implemented yet. Okay. Apart from that, reduction in GST maybe of the purchases made towards construction would have definitely helped. So other governments, like world governments, implemented things like payroll protection programs, then purchase and lease back programs. So that is something I thought we could have considered. And maybe, so in my limited opinion, I would say real estate was ignored in bringing the right incentives. That may not be the opinion for everybody, but I think just to, just extension in RERA timelines was not enough. We could have had more financial support.
ओके ओके, ये क्वेश्चन मैं हर एक से जानना चाहूंगी, किसी को अगर इसके ऊपर और कुछ व्यूज देने हो कि गवर्नमेंट ने कुछ और करना चाहिए था और आपके एक्सपेक्टेशंस के हिसाब से हुआ नहीं, या फिर you are still waiting for some decisions to come. Is there anything like that?
I like to just add to what Mayuri mentioned, that yes, we were really hopeful, especially in the GST reduction, that the central government would abide by some relaxation to come, especially for the first properties to be bought from the developer. They could have curtailed it till December 30th so that one can actually see a lot of first-hand sales happening. Even if not, I mean, I would definitely like to portray on behalf of the entire builder fraternity that some reduction on the GST by virtue from the central government or stamp duty from the state government will definitely help sales. I'm sure Rishi will agree with me, for commercial properties, at least we should reconsider the GST. 12% is way too high. Even if you bring it down to 5 at parity with the residential, I'm sure the commercial sales will be back at its head. That's my point on that.
Right. In fact, मैंने हाल ही में घर लिया है, तो I can completely agree with you. So मेरा अभी का experience है. Taking this discussion forward, now I would like to speak about affordable housing. So in this entire lockdown and pandemic time, we have seen a major migration in the country. People were migrating from the big cities to their small cities or villages. In fact, this migration was considered as one of the biggest migrations after independence. So my question to Mr. Harish Shroff, that considering this migration, people have shifted from big cities to smaller cities, and some are saying that they do not want to come back. Rather, government is changing their decisions and making rules. Like, for example, MP government recently said that they are giving 100% reservation to their locals in the government job. So this scenario where the government is also taking such decisions, do you think that smaller cities will see more demand in affordable housing?
To bring actually more clarity, Amruta, to this entire question, I think I want to break this into 3 parts. One is the labor migration based on state government's directives. Second, the demand, which actually comes across a mid-segment or a lower mid-segment housing. That is what you meant by affordable, I guess. But give you clarity on the labor migration as such. I don't think so that that's just for the mouthpiece. It will not really happen because plans on paper take a lot of time to culminate. And what is work in hand today is more valued. So today, a laborer who's sitting at his far-flung native place will wait for the promises for a month or 2 to deliver. But in case if the state governments are not able to show something, they will eventually come back to the work in hand. See, everybody has a house to run. So with this pandemic, becoming the new normal, how to live and how to, like Gunjan rightly mentioned, that how the safety standards have been enhanced at the site. I'm sure the builders will take good care of their migrant laborers and they are waiting for them to come back. And coming back to the housing part, yes, definitely there is a shift of demand. I would not go far. I'm talking about Maharashtra. If you take a look at Bombay vis-a-vis Pune, there's a lot of investor wealth shifting here because obviously Bombay is too bloated up on the prices, lack of opportunities, over-leveraged of builders. So I'm sure a lot of investors look at Pune as a next viable option to increase their wealth. Secondly, in the housing, yes, with reduced salaries comes reduced rentals. There are issues where people are forced to switch jobs and people find, this kind of a living much more relaxed in Pune. So, and I see a huge paradigm shift in the commercial demand also. If eventually a company has to operate from Bombay paying a huge real estate cost, Pune offers better talent as well as better infrastructure, probably at half the cost. So in case if the companies don't see the profitability going up by virtue of business, they would look at cost efficiency. And that is where real estate Pune will offer the next option to Bombay as well. So my take is definitely there is a huge paradigm shift coming in the demand for housing as well as for investor wealth.
Okay. Mr. Murthy, I would like to know your views on the same question. Do you see that shift from big cities to smaller cities considering affordable housing?
Absolutely. See, smaller cities have always been the flavor of affordable housing. And even the government initially gave a very good push with housing for all. Unfortunately, all the stakeholders to make this happen have not been in sync. So say for example, a person who wants to buy a house in a sub 20-25 lakh range today, for him, funding is a challenge, getting a loan is a challenge. Public banks will not support him unless all his documentation is in his place. And if he chooses to go to NBFCs, the rate of interest is much higher, which then makes the house unaffordable. So whenever we come up with a program which is the need of the hour for a country like ours, all stakeholders should support it. It's not just, you can't just put it in the hands of a developer and say, you do it. Everyone has to support it and then it will go through. So that's the reason cities like Pune and tier 2 cities really do well in affordable housing. The reason being that the cost of living over here is really reasonable. The cost of housing over here is is reasonable compared to other cities of an equal standard across the country, say Bangalore or Hyderabad. And that's why Pune is always a preferred destination. Also, in terms of you don't see fantastic appreciations over the past few years in Pune, but you don't see significant drops in the value of houses, unlike say Mumbai, where at one time a house you would buy at over 1 lakh rupees a square feet, and then there's a drop to say 80,000 and 70,000 rupees a square feet. You don't see dramatic changes like that over here. So your investment is pretty safe. And that's why, people even from outside India prefer to look at cities like Pune.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Murthy. I want to talk about some important decisions taken by government. This question is to Mr. Harish Manjrekar. Sir, I would like to know that RBI has announced liquidity infusion worth rupees 5,000 crores to National Housing Board. So has it given any relief?
I think as developers, I think we've been asking, I think CREDAI has been talking to RBI for a very long time to get some relief. I think pre-COVID days as well, because the market sentiment had not been the best. And now I'm talking as pan-India. I think this has to be not been taken only with Pune, because Pune still remains resilient. But if you take NCR, probably the worst hit, or Bombay for that matter, which is even worst hit, there are some structural issues which had to be taken. And now obviously government's push with one-time restructuring or infusing money, these do help. Obviously, is it sufficient? Probably not, but it is definitely a step in the right direction. As I think Mr. Jain also spoke earlier, real estate will remain probably one of the starting points. I mean, the whole cycle is stopped. So the starting points will probably be real estate, where it brings in money to more than one industry. So money put in real estate brings in money to more than one industry. So yes, so the RBI one-time restructuring of loans, or then even infusing of the NBD, does bring in liquidity. But this is a very slow process. Even right now, the one-time restructuring is only if the developer is affected by COVID. It doesn't mean that post-COVID, most of the larger developers who were infected in NCR or Mumbai, these people will not get reliefs because they were affected with pre-COVID days. Right. So while this is definitely a welcome move, will it impact? I think the impact will probably not be as much as we had hoped, but yes, it will have a positive impact on the industry.
Okay. Mr. Ashish, I would like to know this from you, that how is the affordable rental housing complexes under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana going to change the dynamics of rental housing?
Yeah, so actually, I would just like to again add on what Mr. Manjrekar said. So I would agree with him that the policies of the government, like RERA extension or MSME funds or Swami fund or one-time restructuring of loans, all these policies are actually very good policies. I think that we are actually blessed that we have a proactive government in coming up with schemes or policies to take care of these situations. So yes, implementation may be a problem. So that is a concern which we have to look into. But the policies or the schemes which government are coming up with are pretty good. One of those schemes is ARHC, which you just mentioned, affordable rental housing complexes. So recently, Union Cabinet has approved this affordable rental housing, especially for urban migrants. So the problem which we are facing right now, so the migrants are coming here, but they don't have a place to stay, or the place is very, very expensive because the rentals have gone up like anything. So not only commercial, but residential rentals as well. So either they have the options to make unauthorized colonies, or to stay in slums and which are not hygienic, or which are not so good to stay. So this scheme is especially for these laborers, which is in line with the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. So basically, in these schemes, it will be a private government partnership (PPP), wherein either the existing buildings which are lying down of the governments, which are unused, can be used for these complexes. They'll make into these rental housing complexes for the laborers at cheaper rate. So that is one option. Or the other option is, even if you have some private lands or anything, you can also make these kind of complexes wherein the government are giving concessions for the loans to make available these complexes for the downtrodden or the laborers who are migrants especially. And they are also having technology. If anyone is getting some new technology, they're giving an additional grant for that as well. So I think this will also make a quite a positive effect on the laborers who are staying or who are coming into Pune, and they are not getting a place to, a hygienic place to stay. So this will be a positive thing for the urban cities like Pune and Bombay, and reverse migration, which is the major issue. So this will help in reverse migration of laborers from the villages.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I would like to ask this to each one of you, would like to take your views on this, that what mandatory changes you think that now you have to make in your business, be it be in marketing or about, having the workforce, getting the laborers. What are the changes those are important and you think that now we have to make this, considering this entire scenario in future also? So Mr. Manjrekar would start with you.
I think one of the biggest learning points probably post-COVID has been how to keep your business the most agile. Being able to turn around quickly, being able to adapt to a situation that overnight changes economic conditions so fast. I think that is the biggest takeaway that probably we as a group have taken. How to keep it the most agile and probably even light. So that you can tide over most of these issues, because this probably was one of the most unforeseen incidents that ever happened. So I think our biggest takeaway remains that to keep the business as agile as possible for quick changes. I think that's what I would.
Okay. Mr. Shroff, your views on this?
To add to what we've learned actually in the context where now we invest a lot in our people, because we've seen that in these COVID times, people were the best investment, whether it's your staff, whether it's your clients, whether it was your vendors, your suppliers, people are our best investment. So we continue to work on our relationships with them and thereby creating immense goodwill and value. And I'm sure business follows through word of mouth. So our mantra is to invest in people this time when they need us the most.
Okay. Mayuri, what do you think about it?
One important learning that came through this situation was to work with probably minimal task force, not really burdening up our own companies with your extra overheads. So to be minimal, to be planned and organized for future, let's say 2 years, 5 years, so that you are aware of if and maybe taking such circumstances already in consideration, like asking questions like what if, are you planned for a situation like this? So most of us were not. Maybe we've I think most of us being millennials were always living in a bubble, but then whoever was well planned were able to sustain. Apart from that, being empathetic to your people. It's very important that you understand not only business is there, but business is there because of our people. So how empathetic are you was, I think, one most important learning for all of us.
That's very important. Mr. Murthy, what is your view on this? What this pandemic has taught you and made changes in your business?
So I think like most of you all know, we are a company that does real estate as well as construction. So some of the learnings that we've had is, how on site you need to be quick enough to replace labor with mechanization so that progress is not hurt. That is one of the key things, because in construction, construction, we end up with clients who, a single client who gives us crores of rupees, and you don't want to disappoint these clients. And timelines to them are very crucial because of, the way they do work. Say, for example, airports where we're working as well. In real estate, of course, it's been very important to understand people's needs and react very, empathetically, like everyone said. It's also important to make sure that even if you're not able to solve their problem, they feel that, they have been heard and someone is there to support them through this tough times. This is something that none of us planned for. Even in our worst, when we do a pessimistic business plan, we consider that maybe 2 projects out of 10 will not work, and what happens then? Never do we do that. I'm going to be sitting at home for 5 months, and what do we do then? So the whole way of how we've been planning business has changed dramatically. And instead of focusing on, say, long-term plans, we now focus on what is our monthly plan and quarterly plans, with much more focus and with much more eye to detail compared to what we were doing in the past.
Okay. Mr. Jain, your views?
Yeah, so my learning from this was that we have to adapt new technology in everything, like to adapt new technology in materials, in laborers. So how can you save labor by getting new technologies, new processes, new systems? One example which everyone I think has adopted here is in marketing as well. So now customers are fearing to come on site. So people are, we are making AV films or show flats which they can see online. So all these things, the new technologies, we have to adapt to overcome this. And the most important is, yes, the relations with all the channel partners, all the partners basically in your business. That includes your team, your vendors, your partners, your landowners, your customers, everyone who has supported us in this situation and who has understood this situation.
Okay. Gunjan, what do you think about it?
Yeah, like he said, I think the ability to go online has been the major turnaround point for us. Until now, real estate was a very kind of traditional industry with a lot of things happening offline, but definitely in the past few months we have all adapted to online means of documentation, registration processes, payment transactions, along with the virtual tours and things like that. So I think just the ability to go online has been a huge supporting point for us in the last few months.
Okay. Now there are some questions coming from our audience. I would like to take this question. What are the key changes in building material and real estate? Mr. Murthy, would you like to say something about this?
Sure. I think in terms of building material, we've seen it's a constant process, and this is something where it's each one to their own. It's based on how companies have adapted themselves to make themselves more cost efficient. So there are instances where we're using hybrid systems for construction, which is neither a completely aluminum formwork nor completely plywood conventional formwork. But we're using systems which have given us speed and less dependency on labor. So those kind of building materials and that's what we've been doing to overcome this. In terms of marketing for real estate, again, we've all tried our own strategies. Some have been successful, some have not been as successful. When it comes to luxury housing, we've kept it very niche. We're very careful about where we advertise, where we do branding. We don't just do it anywhere and anyhow. In terms of affordable housing, we believe in doing it much more aggressively. We don't like to keep it subtle. So those kind of changes have happened, so that there is more recognition and there is more recall value from the customers as well.
Okay, great. I would like to ask the audience to ask their questions, so that I'll take few questions. Now I want to ask again this question to everybody and take their views, that when do you think that this entire real estate sector, luxury housing, affordable housing, anything it is, will come back to its normal and will see its peak sales again in coming years? Do you think that it will take a lot of time to come back to where it was, or this will just happen in a very small period of time? Mr. Manjrekar, would like to start with you.
I think that's the $1 million question, I think. I think we've definitely seen signs of revival. I think we're definitely headed in the right direction. It obviously depends. There is a lot coming up. There's the US elections coming up, which affects the IT industry, and then indirectly the Pune real estate market,
Right.
which is up in November. There is also a lot of policies. I mean, the moratorium gets over next week, and we get to know how the banking industry will perform. So there is a lot of unknowns. How long does it last? It's I think everyone's guess. But the good news is, I think every week is better than the last. So that's the positive that I would say. I think everyone on this panel or anyone in the real estate market will definitely vouch for that. That every week is better than the last. So I think we are headed in the right direction. When do we come out of it is, I think, only time will tell. It can be sooner if let's say all the policies and economics align, or maybe a little longer, but that's still not as bad since we're in the right direction. That's my take on it.
Okay. Mr. Shroff.
Okay. My point is that I'm sure all the panelists would have already seen more than 70% of their business come back. So we are almost 70% COVID and are back in business. As far as, yes, there were job losses, so there's a lot of pending demand on the line. And with every passing month, like Rishikesh mentioned, that with every passing week, things are getting better, footfalls are coming in. So we see a lot of people now coming with the necessary precautions how to buy their homes. So I think now this is the new normal. So people have actually got to this. The dust has settled down. I'm sure there'll be no further job losses. No doubt that the market has shrunk. And now we have to find our own market within these markets. So now I guess by the end of the year is my take that, things would be fine. Vaccine would help definitely. But and my take is by the end of the year, things should be 100% back to normal.
Yes, I feel I don't see any problem. So I agree that yes, there was a situation which was bad in the lockdown, but I think things are pretty normal now, and people have started booking, and in residential at least I don't see any problem at all. In fact, my opinion is that by next year the policies and the the schemes or whatever the government has implemented, that will give a more positive impact, and I think real estate will bounce back with a very positive and sales and positive numbers. So yes, but more than that, a mental game, which is the vaccine. So hopefully, since Pune would be the first city, maybe since Punekari is developing the vaccine, so we all are immune first and we revive back sooner. Yeah.
That's what we are expecting. That's a very positive note. Gunjan, your views on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think from April to August itself, there has been a huge change in the buyer sentiment. From a survey report, I've seen that the optimism has actually increased from 67% to 93% now. So, and like my counterparts said, I think the biggest positive that has come down from this lockdown is kind of the realization amongst home buyers to own a solid, spacious home in a well-connected location. So, we're also seeing the demand of homes with balconies and kind of extra rooms, which can be converted to home offices or studies. I mean, there was an anticipation of reduced pricing in the beginning, which did keep the home buyers on the fence. But obviously, there has been no inflammation in the property pricing in Pune, I think, in more than 5 years now. So buyers we have seen are back. They just want good deals, offers from us, and some relief in payment structures. So yeah, like Siddharth said, I think Pune has not experienced a major drop in pricing. It's only been arrested at about 2% this year as per survey reports. And I think the main reason for this is the traditional Indian mindset of kind of the ideology of home ownership being the utmost priority, and savings. So we have seen that at least 87% home buyers are back, and mainly they're end users. So that's a huge advantage to us. And again, like Harish said, there's also been a movement in the investor profile. So even second home buyers are coming back into the market for upgrade requirements and kind of second homes. So yeah, the good news is that the sales flow is back on track. And I think by early next year, the market should be in good shape.
Okay, great. There's one question from Mr. Pradeep Jain. He's asking, in terms of real estate, what learning that Mumbai should take from Pune and Pune should take from Mumbai? Who would like to answer that? Mr. Manjrekar, would you like to answer that?
I think that's a very loaded question. I think Pune gives definitely more value for money. I mean,
and Punekars don't take advices. Punekars are Punekars. We are the best.
No, Punekars give a lot of advice.
So they give a lot of advice. Take advices. Please.
But yeah, but I genuinely believe that Pune is probably the highest value for money in real estate, in probably pan-India basis. You'll get the best product for the least value. That's hands down, and I'm sure any of my colleagues from any other cities will also agree. What they can learn from us, I think I won't probably be able to comment on that. I mean, this is what they can learn, but I also think from what we can learn from Bombay markets is they're probably one of the best at marketing. They do these larger than life brochures or whatever marketing material that they put out. But again, I think value for money, if you say anywhere in the city, at commercial, residential, affordable, it's definitely hands down. That's what my belief is.
Okay. Mr. Shroff, your views on that?
Well, Bombay has been on fire as far as the real estate is concerned since the last couple of years. I mean, their purchase, I mean, if you look at it, the end user gets a very, very raw deal by the time, it actually comes to him. The land ownership, the cost of land, the cost of construction, the kind of structures they get into. And most important, Amrita, I feel that they haven't respected the client or the investor. That is what is, because working closely with a few investors in Bombay as well, I always feel that they actually got a raw deal. I mean, the kind of a treatment they deserve as clientele when you're putting in crores and crores of rupees into real estate, the kind of a treatment they got was not very deserving. So in my opinion, Bombay should learn from the mistakes. I mean, each developer has, kind of leveraged themselves to the extent that they think the price rise is going to happen every year. Now the time has come. The kind has leveled up now. So people who are end users will only keep on buying real estate in Bombay. So they shouldn't be really, creating those bloated prices. And as Rishi mentioned, the value for money, what Pune offers, no other city comes close to it.
Okay, great. There's one more question. This is the last question I'm taking from the audience. It says, with adoption of online technologies, are you seeing the same consumer traction, particularly in architecture and construction, where consumers like to visit the site in person?
This technology, how is it possible that a customer can just see the show flat or something on the WhatsApp or on website and they can be converted? So we were also a little skeptical about it, but we thought like that there is no option. Let's give it a try, because there were no site visits happening. So we thought that this is the best possible way, and we actually implemented, and we send on WhatsApp. We started sending the virtual tour of our show flat, and we actually got the conversion. So that is when our team also believed that yes, this can happen, and people have started realizing that now most of the things are going online and no physical presence or is required. So I think yes, it's just a matter of your once you implement, and you have to give it a try to anything new, and I think that's what we did, and it did work.
Okay, okay, wonderful. So now almost it's been 1 hour. We all have been discussing. My last question is to Mr. Siddharth Murthy. I would like to know, rather anyone want to answer this? What advice would you like to give to authorities, investors, and buyers in this particular time?
Okay, so to investors and to buyers, let's start with them first.
Okay.
The general conception is always that real estate is about location, location, location. But when it comes to luxury real estate specifically, or now even it's filtering down to the mid-segment housing, you have to look beyond location. You need to see what is the location, what is the hard product that you're getting, and what is the soft product that you're getting. What I mean by this is, I mean, everyone knows location, that's self-explanatory, so I'm not getting into that. But the hard product is what you're getting as a house, how the plan is, how efficient it is, what is the usable area. There shouldn't be much or negligible wastage in passages, things like that. But just like a hotel industry where just having a big room and a comfortable bed does not complete the experience, but it is the service that completes the experience in a 5-star hotel. Similarly, in high-end luxury, also it is the entire experience that completes this circle. So how are you taking care of toddlers? How are you taking care of young kids? What do you have for teenagers? How are you going to take care? What do you have for people, and how are you going to take care of middle-aged people? What about senior citizens? What are you doing for this entire demography? What are you doing? Like, we have projects where we've gone to the extent of even taking care of pets. So this entire experience that you put out there, that is what you need to see before making a decision, is what I feel. And location alone should not be the decision criteria, because also when a time comes where if you choose to sell this to move to a better place or to a different city for whatever reason, you should have it should not be very difficult to liquidate such a product. And therefore products like this always have, one, a premium while selling, and second, more demand for for these products. With the authorities, I think that is a very long topic, because we have a lot to say to them. But yeah, I mean, there has to be a very strong push for ease of doing business. Today, I think the timelines that we have from land purchase to actually delivering a project is extremely wrong, extremely long. And where we need to find ways to cut that short itself. That itself will give us a lot of breathing space, and it will also convert into savings for the client, because the shorter the period of work, the less financial implications that are there on the developer, and therefore these benefits automatically get passed on to the end user. So,
right.
So that is definitely something that I would recommend.
Okay. Anybody else wants to give any advice, Mr. Manjrekar? आज chance मिला है, advice दे देते हैं कुछ.
No, I think Siddharth covered it all. I think only thing I would say to investors and buyers, I think it's the best time to buy. I think real estate, I don't think there is ever you can say every day is a good time to buy, because values, as we've seen always historically in Pune, have never gone down. I think Gunjan also mentioned it. You take a 5-year, 6-year horizon, we've never really seen a dip. So this is as good as a time that it can come to buy and invest in real estate. That's probably what I would leave with.
Okay. Mr. Stroff, any advice to authorities?
I would just, rather than authorities, Amruta, I'd just like to, tell people from the different sectors. I'm sure my colleagues here on the panel will agree. Since the time COVID happened, and the most favorite question asked to all the veterans from different industry, well, what do you think about real estate? So everybody make very vague statements. It's going to drop 15 to 20%. Veterans from the banking industry, veterans from the mutual fund industry, stockbrokers, where they have no relevance with our industry at all. I mean, they became like suddenly the god to go for real estate. Whereas we were the right people to approach. Every builder knew what exactly, the kind of a work they are doing. I don't give that right to any other veteran from any other industry to comment how much real estate should perform, less or more. We do not comment on the NAV values which keep on changing for mutual funds. We don't talk to the bankers about their NPAs. We don't talk about any shitty loans they give to any industrialist otherwise. So my industry should not give a right to anybody to comment on my pricing. That is what I'm trying to just say, because it changes the sentiment overall. One statement coming in from a veteran changes the entire dynamics. So even the end user who's actually going to get a good deal from a developer suddenly stops just because one veteran announced there could be a property real estate cut by 50 to 20%. No dynamics of the city, no dynamics. And in the context, what? I mean, are you talking about country? Are you talking about city? The statements are captured. Rest, we have to brand the impact. So that's what one take is from there, that if given a choice, they should refrain from making such statements.
That's perfect. That's so sharp. This is what I was expecting. Gunjan, what do you have to say? Any advice?
I agree completely. The kind of micro analysis is lacking. Making broad statements is not relevant to every city, especially a city like Pune, which is so stable in its pricing and has always been. I think right now we're all looking at a rising cost in construction, overheads, bank interest loans. So there is no chance that the price is going to drop. And if anything, it's only going to increase henceforth. So I think the right time to buy is now, is going to be my advice to all the buyers and investors.
Great. Thank you, Gunjan. Mr. Jain, any advice from you?
Yeah, again, to authorities, as Siddharth mentioned, we are really concerned because the time taken from the buying the land and to actually launching the project is too long. So if we can reduce that, I mean, that would be a very, very big advantage for the industry. And yes, for the investors and buyers, the right time is to buy is now, because the housing loan interest rates are at its lowest. It was in 2005. I think the same interest rates have come down now. So this is the right time to buy. And also COVID has given a lesson to all the buyers or all the home buyers that they need more space to to live, and it's time to upgrade. So basically we are also into premium residential properties, and I think as you would also likely agree that it's time to move from a Honda City to a Range Rover now. So same is with us. So I think it's time to move, time to upgrade, and time to select a better home.
Great, amazing. Mayuri, from you.
I think what Gunjan and Mr. Harish covered was just apt. I don't think so. These statements, when they don't really have any base, what happens is it directly affects the kind of communication the consumers start having with our forefront team. And there's no way we can, in fact, we would want to hike the prices now, because we are probably selling ready to go, ready to live in projects. And the current sentiment for consumers is like, mera khud ka ghar chahiye. And they have been house arrested for 4 months, 5 months in, maybe some rental houses, or just some places where, they could not cope up with multiple kind of crises that were happening during the pandemic. So the current, I think, situation is we should definitely be more positive towards our industry, whether it's the way authorities are treating the developers, whether it's the customers treating the developers, or whether it's the developers treating everybody. I think you just have to be very smooth with the situation. Yeah.
Great, great. Well, it has been a very brainstorming discussion. It's been almost more than an hour we all have been discussing. And as expected, it was a very nice discussion. Even the audiences are saying that they loved it. It was in-depth. And all of you have given your views very nicely, very sharp views as expected. So these are difficult times for all of us, but it's really nice that you all are very positive. I thank each one of you for participating and giving time and giving your views. It really means a lot. And thank you very much once again. On behalf of Ace Perkins Jaguar Land Rover, I would like to thank you all for joining this conversation and giving your time. Thank you so much, guys, and take care. Difficult times, but I'm sure we all will sail through it very nicely, very safely, and all the best to each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.